This is Peak Productivity, the podcast for Asana lovers and productivity nerds. In today's episode, we talk with Bastien about Asana reporting, workload, dashboards, insights, and we also talk about Asana Inbox and how to manage it. Welcome to Peak Productivity. Hi, Bastien. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Finally, it seems that it's not that hot as it was last week. We can feel autumn is coming.
Winter is coming, like they say.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, autumn is my favorite season of the year. Everything seems to start over, and everyone is back from holidays, and
The multitask is messy. The email inbox is overflowing.
Exactly. You don't do any more housekeeping tasks. That those housekeeping tasks that are for August when everyone is on holiday. So again, back to work.
Exactly.
Cool. To start today's episode, I want to talk about a couple of new features. It seems that that feature that you hinted last week, the one about emojis, is starting to show up.
Yes, it was released. So basically, that was introduced a couple of weeks ago. You can now create new tabs within a project view. You can have lists, you can have a timeline, you can have a second list, you can have 3 timelines if you want. You can rename those tabs. And the new feature is that if the tab name includes an emoji as the first character, then the emoji will replace the tab icon. So you can replace the list icon, timeline icon with whatever you like. It's a very small feature, but I think it's a testimonial to the importance that Asana gives to emojis. And I think it's really good.
Yeah, definitely. From a visual perspective, it will help to differentiate several tabs. I prefer emojis than these icons that
Me too.
we have now. Yeah.
And
I've also
just so you know, Asana is running an A/B test at the moment. When for a couple of people that are part of the test, when they walk into a new project, they will only have one single tab, only list. So we'll see what the test shows. I think it's good because it doesn't overwhelm people, but at the same time, it doesn't show them the possibilities and the things you could have. I'm not completely sure. What do you think about this new one?
Yeah, that was what I was going to point out, that I've read about this A/B test. Is there any visual indicator that you can add additional tabs?
I guess you have the plus button. That's it.
Okay, I am not sure. Probably those organizations that will help will get the help from Asana experts like yourself will discover these additional views. Those beginners that start using Asana might not be aware of that feature, and maybe they don't see that they have potential other views like the board or the timeline or the calendar.
And at the same time, does the beginner need something else than the list for the first couple of weeks? Maybe they don't. Maybe list is enough and covers almost everything, all the use cases. And you can still decide on the default view when you create a project. So if you know you want a timeline or a calendar, you can still decide when you create the project. But then you only see calendar as being the available tab.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, during this couple of weeks that we had this feature to add or remove tabs, every time that I was checking a project, I was removing tabs to leave only the tabs that are relevant for that project. So it's a cleaner view of the project. We will see. Definitely, there's some testing going on regarding the views, and we'll see what it's and where it ends up. Cool. Any other feature that's in the horizon? Any new?
They changed 4 colors. I don't know if you noticed. 4 colors from the palette actually got slightly changed, including one of the greens. It's really a
Okay,
geek
yeah.
conversation, isn't it? So one of the green changed for accessibility reasons. I think the contrast between the colors one was not enough, and people that have disabilities couldn't see the differences between the colors, so they slightly changed 4 colors.
Okay, these are these super light changes that only those that spend
Yes.
hours in Asana can notice. Well, I wanted to talk this week about Asana reporting. We've talked in the past episodes about capturing work, but not always about reporting and monitoring projects. And there are some interesting features that Asana offers in terms of reporting. In especially now that the site nav has changed and we have that inside section with portfolios, goals, and reporting. Um, what's your approach to that section, or when do you think it's time to explode these options?
I think it's important to structure your project properly and start adding custom fields and try to put the right structure in place. And then that's when it becomes interesting to look at reporting and dashboards and searches. And that's going to unlock an entire world for you. And one of my clients, I actually blew his mind when I showed him that he can have very powerful reporting because we structured things properly beforehand. So we had all of those columns with the drop downs, with the numbers. And that's great. You can sort, you can filter, but then with reporting, you can really go to the next level. In our case, for example, we have our invoices within Asana. They're all listed as tasks. And the dashboard of the project really makes it all come together. We can see how many invoices we have out there, for how much we got paid last month, which type of payment was used. It's really powerful if you structure things properly. If you don't have any custom field, it's not gonna be that useful. You will only have like complete task, overdue tasks, and stuff like this. But once you structure things properly, it becomes amazing.
You mentioned something that I think it's very relevant when you are setting up your projects and you're adding custom fields. Sometimes customers have the temptation to add multi-select custom fields, and when it comes to multi-select custom fields, reporting gets difficult because it's not possible to sort by this type of fields. So I always advise. If possible, to use the single select option in a
I think you
custom field.
shouldn't hesitate. Something is either you can either have multiple values or you can't. There's not really a choice to be made. I agree with you. The error we see very often is someone picking up options and using multi-select for whatever reason, when in fact you should never have multiple values at the same time. So there's no choice to be made. You just have to select whatever fits the data set that you're trying to create.
Yeah. Actually, that multi-select field, even if it looks nicer, at the end of the day, it's like an open text field because you can use it for reporting, and yeah, maybe visually you can have like multiple departments or multiple languages or something like this. But for reporting purposes, it's not that useful. Any curious use case for portfolios besides the typical aggregate view for different projects that comes to your mind or that you've seen in one of your engagement with your clients?
I did not prepare for this one. What I can tell you is that most people don't use portfolios. They sometimes struggle to see the value of portfolios, and I think um, it's like if you go back to the pyramid, right? You have the tasks, the project, the portfolio, the goals, the mission. If you don't structure your project properly, then portfolios don't really make sense. The only way to have meaningful portfolios is to have the right project with the right size and with the right content. For example, in our case, each client we work with is a project. So it does make sense to place those projects into a portfolio. If you don't have that structure, if your clients are a section or a task, then portfolio doesn't really make sense. Also, portfolios start making a lot of sense if you have status updates. If you don't have any updates being made to your project, any status update, then the portfolio is just like a visual way to see project together. So really, you need to make sure that you structure project properly and start using status updates so that portfolios can start making sense. I think portfolios are a very great tool to use during meetings. When you have a weekly meeting with your team, very often you're going to go through different projects. That's typically a use case for portfolios. You should create a portfolio for that meeting and then just go through that portfolio when the meeting happens. I don't have any specific or interesting use cases. It's pretty boring. It's just project being put together.
Yeah.
And usually it's not used that much. Pretty
Have you
true.
faced have you faced the situation where a client needs just a dashboard, and maybe they created a portfolio, but what they needed was just the dashboard view, and maybe creating in the reporting section a new dashboard.
Yes, that's you're right to say this, and this is sometimes something I suggest. The portfolio is a way to target a group of projects, including in the reporting. If you go into universal reporting, you need to choose the data you want to look at when you build charts. You can either look at the entire account, you can look at one project, you can look at 3 projects, but you don't often want to type every single project you want to look at. So creating a portfolio could be a way to create that group and target that group within the dashboards, especially if that portfolio tends to grow. And in my case, when I have new clients come in, they get added to the portfolio automatically through the template we're using. When that's the case, then we know that our dashboards are always up to date because they target the portfolio instead of targeting project one by one.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on that. How many times have you answered the question, can I export the dashboard to a PDF or or
Yeah,
to a
yeah, very
PowerPoint?
often. Yeah, and I think I'm not sure Asana is going to make this easier anytime soon because their goal is obviously to have everybody come into Asana to look at the chart. They don't want to make it easy for you to collaborate with people outside of Asana. I've never had anyone at Asana confirm this. This is just like an intuition I have. I think it's not very high on their roadmap to allow you to share stuff outside of Asana. That being said, you can still export one chart as an image. So if you
Yeah,
have a couple of charts, you can export them and put them together into slides. But yeah, that does come up pretty often. Usually that comes up when you are in a transition where people start using Asana, but they still have to do reporting the old way and have the slide deck on Friday afternoon being built for the leadership. But we always tell them, try to get people to come into Asana instead of having that static slide deck being created on a Friday afternoon.
exactly. Yeah, the fact that you can click on any graph and have real-time list of the projects or the task or the information that it's behind that that graph, it's much more powerful than the paper or the PDF
Yes.
document.
What we do see, however, is people syncing a portfolio with Google Sheet. That means all the data goes into Google Sheet, and then you have much more freedom to create whatever reporting you want. And for example, I've had a very interesting case where a client used this to create a timeline in Google Sheet that was better than the portfolio timeline they had in Asana, because you sync your portfolio with Google Sheet, and within Google Sheet, you have a widget called Timeline. So you could get a timeline of your project, and you have a lot of customization possible to improve that timeline, decide on the colors, on the text size, whatever you want. And this worked great for them. For example, they didn't want to see the milestones displayed on the timeline. So by doing this, they were able to not show the milestones in their Google Sheet timeline. That can also allow you to have like the company logo in the corner or any any change that you would wish you can apply to Asana, but you couldn't?
Oh, sounds interesting. Regarding the messaging on portfolios, I can see clients using comments on tasks, sometimes messages on projects, but it's not very common to see
No.
people using messaging on portfolios.
Or on project for that matter. I've almost never seen anyone actually use messages at the project level. The status updates, I think, are considered as messages, so
Yeah,
it's like a kind of a different feature. But I've almost never seen anyone use messages at the project level. It's a bit of a clunky feature. It has a lot of shortcomings. Even less at the portfolio level. Um, it's really rare. It's only for very big companies. It's also like nested portfolios. Almost never happens, and people don't go that far. Usually, when it comes to messaging, they have Teams, they have Slack, they have other ways to communicate with leadership and managers. So they don't really use the portfolio messages. However, there's also status updates at the portfolio level, but it's the same thing. Very often people
yeah,
don't use that. They don't have that big of a need to communicate the status on a portfolio.
yeah. That's true. That's true. The status update on on a project level, it's something that it's used quite often, but
Well, that yeah,
not
that's
at portfolio
amazing.
level.
No,
Yeah. Let's talk about workload. The default measure is by the number of tasks, but you can switch to estimated time or any other
yeah.
numeric field. But this requires that everyone on the organization is very inserts the information every day, and they are perseverant when it comes to adding information. Otherwise, the information you can see in the workload tab, it's not real, it's not true. What's your point on that?
I think using the task count as an effort metric doesn't make sense. Like it never does. Tasks are widely different. They have different sizes. It just doesn't make any sense. So you should always have like a custom metric. Um, I think one of the it works in two. It mostly works for people that work in an agency setting that have a culture of billing clients based on time spent, because they already had to track time anyway. So they usually had a different tool. They can go to Asana to track their time. In that case, it does make sense. Also works for us as an agency because all the meetings we have are cataloged into Asana because we need to have tasks. We want to take screenshots. We want to take notes. So we do have those meetings as tasks, and we write down the duration of the meeting because we want some stats. In that case, the workload feature does work. That allows us to see how many meetings we have for how long, and detect if someone might have too many meetings at one given point. But it's a bit hard to use because, as you said, everybody has to play ball. They have to write down actual time within the tasks. They have to make sure the dates are correct. The subtasks do not count in the workload view. The workload only looks at project within the portfolio. The portfolio has a limit of 500 projects, but if you go above 250, there's no workload anymore. So basically, you only have 250 projects to play with. So there's a lot of shortcomings. It's getting better with universal workload that was introduced for enterprise because it does include subtasks now, and it looks at the entire account, not just some specific project, but you still have to define the metric, and you still need people to actually write down values. The other limitation is that you need to define a capacity for people. That's going to be a value for the entire week that is being evened out on the days. And you can't include the weekends. You cannot have someone that doesn't work on Wednesdays. It's going to still even things out on a Wednesday. So it's one of those features that was advertised on the website that is not that easy to use in real life. And we have a lot of trouble explaining to the client that it's not as good as they think it is.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I would add that there's a shift in organizations' mindset. every day you have more organizations that are focusing on value instead of time. Yeah, only these consulting firms or agencies that they charge per hour. But I think that many organizations are switching to value pricing or value proposals.
But they still
And
have to
yeah,
track time, and I think they usually still track time to make sure they don't go overboard. But it's a
yeah,
big culture change. Asking people to track how long something took is something that is not always accepted by everyone, and they feel like they are being policed around if they have to input time spent, and um, and you're going to have a lot of inconsistencies with people not writing down values, not updating something that was not the actual time. It's a bit hard.
yeah, and if you do it well, if you add estimates and real time spent, it's double the work, and there's not a lot of value. Maybe you can see the availability of resources, like when someone is going to be available. But I think that there are other ways to get that information that are not uh, that don't require that much work. Yeah. Well, I wanted also to talk in this episode about additional features that you can find when surfing Asana, especially when you are working with rules that are the external apps, like the ones, for instance, that you guys at I Do provided, or Flowsana, or um, any recommendation, any app that you think that really expands the value that Asana can provide?
Yeah, Flozana is a good example. Asana to go is well known. Is Instagant is the go-to app if you want a better timeline. The tool we build ourselves that I do are also something that will solve some of the problems you might have that are not currently covered by Asana. And it's usually what all those apps are about. They cover use cases that are not covered by Asana, either because it's too early and Asana is not ready yet to cover these use cases, or they will never do. And sometimes those tools allow you to do stuff that Asana will never ever do because it's not aligned with their vision and it's not aligned with what they have in mind. So sometimes there's a necessity to use those tools. For example, time tracking. Maybe we can consider that Asana went as far as they could. Maybe, I'm not sure, I don't know, but maybe they will not go further than this. So if you really want to do some powerful time tracking with hourly rates, costing, budgets, and all of that stuff, maybe you need to go to every hour and use every hour in combination with Asana. And this is something a lot of people struggle to understand. Asana has a vision, it has a roadmap, it will not do everything. We don't want Asana to do everything. So you do need to have those apps to help you cover some of those use cases because Asana is not going to do everything. And then what we hope as app developers is to be helped by Asana to promote our apps. But while we wait, you can always go to the forum. You will find us online. You can watch the webinars we create to discover all of those apps.
Is it easy to develop these apps?
It's yeah. If you're a developer, it's quite easy. The API is quite easy to work with. Deploying the app is quite easy. It's actually it's quite fine. I think what's hard is to find use cases that are not covered by Asana, and then the hardest part is to convince people to use your app, especially if you want them to pay, because people consider that they already pay for Asana. It's quite expensive. Why would they pay for something else that they consider should be within the app? That's really hard. If you take Instagant, for example, uh, some people are really happy when they find Instagant and they have no problem paying for Instagant. The other half just say that it's outrageous that the timeline is not better. It should be part of Asana, and there's no way they're going to pay for something that shouldn't be included. And that's discussions we have very often. In addition to this, you have the security concerns from the IT department that do not want external apps to connect to Asana, because that does give us the ability to read and change things within the account.
Yeah, one of the good things when adding external apps is that you don't always need to purchase as many licenses as you have in Asana. Maybe you have like 50 Asana licenses, but you only need 5 or 10 Everhour licenses or
Yes.
any other
Or one
service license.
Instagram for that person doing a specific timeline.
Yeah, yeah, but I agree that it's good to keep Asana as simple as possible. It's one of the most appealing features that Asana offers when a company is evaluating Asana. Uh, the learning curve and how easy it is to use it and how intuitive it is to use it is one of the most interesting features. But some teams need to go the extra mile and need these extra applications. Anything else, Bastien, that you want to talk in today's episode?
Yeah, make sure to clean up your My Task view, empty your inbox, empty your
Yeah,
email inbox. And I'm gonna keep telling people it's important to make sure your My Task view is clean, your inbox is empty. That's the only way to get clarity and really be productive. If you are buried under tasks and notifications, you can't think clearly, you're going to miss things, you're going to miss priorities, and really spend that extra time cleaning up. In my case, I spent, I think, almost 1 hour every day just cleaning things up, answering emails, organizing my work. That's the only way for me to be effective for the remaining 6, 7, 8 hours that I have during my day.
cool. Any tips? I think we talk about my tasks, and it's quite simple to understand how my tasks work. It's like these the things that I need to do, and I can organize depending on several criteria. What about inbox? Are you a fan of inbox zero also
Oh
on
yeah.
Asana? How do you face? How do you tackle your inbox? How do you read you triage your inbox?
Um, you need to archive things you've dealt with. It's really important. If you don't archive, you're just going to have that long list. It's going to be really hard to remember where you stopped and you're going to miss stuff. So make sure to archive everything. If you're starting today, you can archive the entire inbox through the three dot menu. And then it's all about each notification should bring value to you. If it doesn't bring value to you, if you shouldn't have received that notification, then something is not set up properly. Maybe you are part of a task that you shouldn't be part of. You need to leave that task. Maybe you get reminded about new tasks created in a project. If you don't want that, you can change that setting as well. Maybe you get notified because you are still a collaborator on things within a template that you created 3 years ago. This is something you have to fix. Every single notification should bring value to you. Sometimes you get notified about something that is not your priority. That's okay. In that case, you read and you archive. If you have something to do, you need to have a task that represents that piece of work. Someone telling you, could you please do this in a comment is not enough. It's a good starting point. But if there's something you have to do, you need to either assign the task to yourself or create another task and assign it to yourself. That will allow you to archive that notification, get a new task, and triage that task into your My Task view. So to me, that's completely fine to create tasks just to be able to archive notifications, because the goal is really to empty that inbox as often as possible, several times a day, if you can.
And also have the expand option enabled.
Yes, exactly. So have that little button at the top. Make sure that it's blue. When it's blue, you do see everything that's new, not only the last thing on each task. That's really important. Make sure that's enabled every time, and make sure you don't have any filters on. You can turn some of them on sometimes just to catch up and triage, but you should always go back to having no filter being applied so you can see really everything that needs to be seen.
Exactly. And if you feel overwhelmed by the amount of notifications, this means you are following too many projects or you are collaborating in too many tasks, you have the option to unfollow projects if you don't need to be notified about them. I think it's good tips. It's probably one of the sections in Asana that people pay not enough attention, and that will let you follow what's going on in your organization. And I don't know if it happens in your trainings, but I try to allocate enough time to talk about my task, obviously, and the inbox.
Yeah, and what I like to explain often is that Asana will inevitably reveal problems the company already had. If you have too much on your plate, that was the case before Asana. It's not Asana's fault. If you get notified about too many things because you want to micromanage everybody, that's a problem you had before Asana. It might be getting worse because you have all those notifications, but it was already the case. You are a micromanager. So you have to deal with it. You have to do something. You have to unfollow topics. That's not Asana's fault if you are a micromanager, if you want to stay involved on 20 things. If you just have too much on your plate, that's not Asana's fault. Asana is just the tool that revealed the problem that you already had.
If you want more advice like this one, you can always reach out to Bastien at ido-clarity.com, or you can also contact with volcanic.agency. More Asana information, more discussions, more new features in the next episode. Again, as always, a pleasure, Bastien. Have a nice week, and thank you very much.
See you next week. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.